You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek and joined by your co-host, Kevin, as always. It is the Friday Night Lights, the Bet Set Snap, Week 1, and we're ready to rock and roll here for some of the NFL Week 1 slate. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Enjoying the Friday night football game. Kind of a bummer we're missing the end of it here, but that's okay. So, I mean, Thursday night was an awesome start to the season. That game was everything anybody could have wanted for it, outside of maybe Baltimore fans wanting the chance for that win. But nevertheless, great game there. This game started off really sluggish for the Eagles. They had turnovers on their first 2 drives, and then they fell in the sink. And now they got a 2-point lead with 2 minutes and 15 seconds to go here. They're trying to salt it away and either get some points on the board or bleed the clock out. So we're 2 games in, and both games have been very good.
Right, certainly are coming down to the end of it for sure. The interesting thing there, right? Like, kind of one of the takeaways last night, like watching the thing, Lamar Jackson played really, really well, right? And we saw lots of that come through, but like there was multiple times at the end of the game, right? And there was a lot of folks I saw on the socials really kind of talking about the inch and the toe on the line and all of these kind of things, but seemingly forgotten in the fray on that one is that the 2 previous plays before that, Lamar missed a wide open Isaiah Likely at the pylon, right? Like missed the timing, missed the throw. Like Isaiah Likely had come open and was uncovered on that one and wide open there, and missed the throw there. On the very next play, Zay Flowers breaks loose and is wide open in the end zone, and the throws just completely missed on that one, and ultimately comes down to that last deal where Isaiah Likely comes down and toes the line just enough that they consider that out of bounds and ends the game. But kind of one of those that everybody's focused on that very last play, whereas looking just like most things, right? Everybody focuses on the finish, but they may miss the 1 or 2 things right beforehand that led up to that determination there, which kind of leads me to my next point. The everybody out there on social media taking victory laps with at this point almost 8 full quarters of football played in the season. So just kind of a couple of funny things I've noticed.
I mean, unless someone can point to me and tell me where they're putting their content out, where we can go back through and fact check all their stuff, I'm not believing anything. Right? It's pretty easy to be 100% when you're looking in the rear view mirror. So whatever. Like, I know we're not 100%. We do our best. We try and provide reasoning behind it, but we're not right 100% of the time. So, are there things that we miss? Yep, absolutely. Are we going to back down from it? No, we're not. And, go ahead and have your comment, take your victory lap, I guess, whatever's going to help you sleep at night. But realistically, these same people are just doing that. They're just typing on a keyboard. There's no content out there. There's no fact checking. They're just, reading some ESPN article and then, oh yeah, well that's what Mel Kiper and Todd McShay said. So this is what it's going to be. Like, okay, guy. Like, kudos to you. Like, I'm glad you read at a 5th grade level. Like, what do you want me to say?
So, but very, very interesting, very fun. And it's one of those that I have got to, I've got to give it to you on some of the calls so far, right? Like, not by any means taking a victory lap on the calls here or anything like that, because again, right, we realize that there's still at this point 16 weeks of the season, and change at this point, but the Isaiah Likely call and picking him up in the best ball formats, you were the one that kind of opened my eyes to that one a little bit more so, and I jumped on that bandwagon with you, and I was really glad off of several of those best ball formats that I followed suit and took Isaiah Likely in like the last round, second to last round in so many of those drafts, because it's certainly starting off the season to my best balls very, very nice. So
No, and at that point, when you're picking him up in the last round, you just need 1 week and he pays for himself,
right.
right? So
And we
if
didn't have to wait
nothing else,
long.
yeah, if nothing else, he probably paid for himself in week 1. So
Mhm.
regardless of what happens. Now, looking at that and trying to see where the Ravens are at their best, I think we're going to continue to see both those tight ends on the field at the same time. They're at their best. We were talking about this pre-show. They're at their best when they're going 2 wide, 2 tight end, and Derrick Henry. Like, that is their best lineup. They spread people out. They have enough speed between Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely at the tight end position to create different matchup problems on different layers of the field. Bateman's going to get his deep shots, and Mark Andrews, he did not have a hyper targeted game. So be it. That
Right.
this is what people should want Lamar Jackson to be, is a diversified quarterback where his target tree is not so narrowed in that it makes it that difficult. Yeah, it's great for fantasy, but it makes him a bad fantasy quarterback in the passing game.
Right.
So
When
it,
and to touch, go ahead.
I'm just saying it is what it is with him, and people, it's the first game, but we'll see. I mean, I think Likely is going to continue to be involved. I don't know that it's going to be as much as week 1. A lot of it's going to depend on what the defense gives him, right? If you're sticking your best coverage linebacker or your best coverage safety on Mark Andrews week in and week out, that means your second best guy is always unlikely. So he will have a mismatch, and we're going to continue to see him produce. Like, this is it's a chess match, right? The Ravens showed one thing. How are teams going to adjust? Because most teams don't have 2 good coverage linebackers.
Right. Well, and I'm glad you bring up the Mark Andrews bit there, because right, there was a lot of folks out there really kind of salty with the Mark Andrews fantasy performance out there. And what I would tell everybody is that that without Mark Andrews on the field, there Isaiah Likely doesn't have the game that he has. Because
Correct.
when you go back and you look at so many of those plays, Isaiah Likely, yes, was wide open on a lot of those things, was seeing single coverage, was seeing, the mismatches on that. But go back through and watch some of those plays again, and watch where Mark Andrews had opportunities, was running routes, things like that. There was a lot of times that when he was out in route running, he was bracketed coverage. And there was a couple of different times I was rewatching that one as well. He had triple coverage on him. Like, at that point, when you have when you have the guy that the other team is so worried about beating you and trying to take him away from that, it opens up the rest of the playmakers on the offense there as well. And yeah, I'm not trying to take away anything from Isaiah Likely, because he had a fantastic game. The evolution that we've seen from him, and the progression that you see out there, year over year, is really kind of truly astounding. And you kind of really saw him take that step last night. So that's awesome to see, and all of that. But yeah, again, one of those that I saw so many people out there really, almost panicking around the Mark Andrews non-performance last night. And what gets lost in that again is, when you go back and really look at that, really watch that, there's only so much that you can do when you're bracketed coverage or triple coveraged on every play there. That's just playing good football, not so much fantasy football, but good football that allows your team to be in a position to make plays to try and win games. So,
Yes, absolutely.
but yeah, no, absolutely fantastic start to the season. And so far, both games very entertaining, and really can't wait to see what we get on the slate this weekend, and that'll be fun. Before we kind of start diving into any games and thoughts there, any kind of final thoughts out there, or not final thoughts, but any kind of news notes, anything like that you would like to hit up?
T. Higgins is doubtful for the game on Sunday now due to a hamstring injury. Jamar Chase has kind of called himself a game time decision. Like he'll see if he wants to play, depending on how contract negotiations are going. Like this Bengals thing's getting weird, y'all. Like I feel bad for T. Higgins. This was supposed to be his. This was supposed to be his game, if nothing else. This was supposed to be his game, and is pulling up lame with a hamstring, and now it's looking more than likely that he's going to miss this game against New England. So obviously he's in a lot of people's lineups, whether it's in the wide receiver 2 spot or the flex. So be mindful of that and get your lineups changed for Sunday.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said there, and with Cincinnati we're kind of really looking at this thing, seeing that they might be kind of the that dark horse team that's and I don't know that you really call them a dark horse team when they're with what they've kind of put together here at the last few years. But this is one of those that this is the kind of nonsense that when you start your season off and you have some of these things kind of going on in the locker room and all that it gets hard to necessarily change the narrative mid-season and all of these things that have been distractions at this point start adding up there. So it'll be interesting to see what the Bengals truly look like, out here week 1 and see what that comes to pass. But it's certainly given me a lot of pause on a lot of different fantasy options that I've got on the with the Bengals this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then any other thoughts here before we start diving into this one?
Saquon had himself a hell of a football game tonight.
Yes, I was anticipating more the like the 2 to 3 touchdowns from Derrick Henry last night than the Saquon three touchdown performance tonight. But the he showed out on this one for sure.
Yeah, he did, and the Eagles used him a lot of good ways. This offensive line is good enough, and they will fix some of these issues with the newer guys, right, and the new center and the new right guard. But Saquon's going to have himself a good year if he can stay healthy, and the Eagles showed that they are going to have no issue riding him. The days of splitting running back touches in Philly, I'm not going to say are over, but they're definitely fewer and farther between than what they were in the previous years, even though him and Will Shipley shared the backfield on a couple different series. Almost they ran 2 running backs out there just to mess with personnel and see what it looked like. But Shipley does such a good job running routes out of the backfield. You have to honor that, and it actually freed up a couple big plays for Brown and Smith each. So, the Eagles offensively looked better. Defensively, not so much. I mean, the Packers, Jordan Love was a little off tonight, honestly. He missed some throws big time. And I think that's what's going to have to cost them 12 seconds. Yeah. So, but Jaden Reed, big game. Christian Watson, I missed, so I had him as a shine. I think I'm going to miss out on that one. He did get in the end zone, but he did not get over his yardage. So I definitely missed that prop. So this just wasn't quite his game, but Jaden Reed had a couple explosive plays and definitely had himself a good football game tonight.
Right. But I'm pretty sure Jaden Reed, like I just saw that, last completion there. So I'm pretty sure that Jaden Reed is going to go over the prop that I called on that one there. So we'll start kind of calculating things up and tallying them up as they come through. And of course, we'll give our breakdowns on how our picks are panning out throughout the season there and coming along. Before we get into our first matchup here, we got George on the YouTube saying, "Hey guys, I'm hyped. They have both Saquon and Gibbs as their running backs for starting. So yeah, Saquon showed out for you tonight. That's for sure. We'll see what what Jahmyr Gibbs does here in the in that matchup on Sunday. I don't know that I've got Jahmyr Gibbs as my pine here as far as a potential underperformer here week one. But season long, you got to feel good about that start there.
Well,
Alrighty.
and even if it does underperform a bit, Saquon done made up for it this week, so you'll be all right.
Yeah, it's very true. Very, very true. All righty. Well, let's go ahead and we'll start breaking down some games here. Unless you want to hit up anything else.
No, let's get after it.
All right. So week one matchup, we're going to start off with Miami and Jacksonville. Miami favored by 3.5, and the over/under on this one 49. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking Miami in this one. I think it's very generous here early in the season to only be a 3.5 point favorite. So I'm liking Miami on this one big time. And I'm thinking we get to the over. I do think Jacksonville's going to put up some points, but I think Miami's just going to put up boatloads. So we're going to see how this game goes, but I think this is an early high scoring affair. So I'm calling the over in this one.
All righty, I like it. I'm going to lean Miami here as well on this one. I think it may be a 3-point game, so the hook might get me on this one, but I do think that we're going to see Miami win this one, and yeah, wouldn't surprise me that we see this a little bit of a bigger gap on this one. But this is one too that I'm a little bit more hesitant on the point total on this one. I'm going to go with the under. So far, I've been wrong on both of the Thursday and the Friday game, but that under's got to come through at some point here, right? Like this is one of those that I think we're going to see just enough. And at 49 points, I really do think we're going to see this one end up in the like 27-20 type of gameplay here. So I'm going to take Miami. I'm going to take the under. A prop that I'm really liking is Jonnu Smith to go under 24.5 receiving yards. This is just a Miami team that we haven't really seen them utilize the tight end a bunch on this one. And I just don't see that necessarily changing. So I think Jonnu's going to go under his 24.5.
No, fair enough. I have Christian Kirk going over 55.5. I think Miami's going to get out to the lead here the second half, and it's going to cause a lot of passing from Trevor Lawrence, and Kirk out of the slot is probably going to be their most consistent option here in week one, just with where the strength of Miami's defensive backs are. So I think Kirk's going to have himself a decent game, but over 55.5.
All right, I like it. Let's go ahead and we'll hit up the next matchup here. We've got the Falcons and the Steelers. Atlanta is favored by 3.5. The over/under on this one 42. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking Atlanta on this one. I am taking the under, though. I think this is going to be a low-scoring affair. I just have zero faith in the Steelers' offense to move the ball. Russ with this calf injury, we're going to see what that looks like. He's saying, day-to-day, game-time decision type thing. But, whether it's Russ or whether it's Fields, I just don't see the passing game having much traction. So then with Fields, you're looking at a lot of, Najee Harris. You're going to try and use the quarterback play to get the ground game going, which is fine, but it just continues to chew up chunks of clock and everything else. So I don't think points are going to be readily available for either team. I think it's going to be a pretty low scoring affair here. It wouldn't surprise me if it's 17-14. Something like that here to start the game or the season, or 16-20, right? I mean, I guess if I'm going for a 4-point Steelers game, 16-20, something like that. But it still brings us in under the 42. So I think that's where we're going to be living.
Fair enough. This is one that I went back and forth on quite a bit, and this one here was the hook is what got me on this one and caused me to pivot. Because I do think that Atlanta wins this game, but I do think that Pittsburgh keeps it within a field goal. So when it's all said and done, I think that we're going to see 24-21 type of matchup here, type of play. So I am going to lean Pittsburgh with the points. I'm going to lean the over just barely. And one of the props that I like is Kirk Cousins with a triumphant return to the gridiron. going over his 237.5 passing yards.
Well, I hope so. It'll help out my Kyle Pitts share in the home league. So I'm hoping that is what happens. I'm taking Jalen Warren over 11.5 receiving yards. This just seems far too low for me. And it really doesn't matter which quarterback is under center for Pittsburgh, whether it's Russ or Fields. Jalen Warren is used more in the passing game than what Najee Harris is. We saw that last year. I think that's going to continue. And 11.5 just seems extremely low. So I'm thinking they get him out of the backfield on a wheel route, or maybe it's a screen pass where he's able to break a couple tackles. But regardless of that's I'm calling the over there. I think that's just too much of a gimme.
Fair enough. I like it. I like the call. We got a couple of comments coming in here. Let's go ahead and hit these up here real quick. Josh over on YouTube asking to start Caleb Williams or Dak Prescott. Has a 16-team PPR is Dak, Caleb Williams, Achane, Zeke, CD, DJ Moore, Njoku, and Tank Dell. Thoughts on the start between Caleb and Dak? And I don't know that I've got to ask you on your opinion, but go ahead.
If there's going to be a time I start Caleb Williams over Dak Prescott, it is going to be this week. It is going to be this week. Traditionally, the Cowboys do not play well in road openers to start the NFL season. Cleveland's pass defense probably has one of the, if not the strongest cornerback trio that I think the Cowboys are probably going to face this season. CD, yes, he's been back in camp for 2 weeks, but only 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks maybe. So while I think some of that natural connection is there, I think Cleveland's going to do a pretty good job bracketing CD Lamb, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on Dak. Like they're just going to dare the Cowboys to make Zeke run the ball, is my opinion. So, I think for this 1 week, this would be the week I think I start Caleb Williams over Dak Prescott. I don't know that I would say that the rest of the season, because I think Dak is going to have another strong year in totality, but this first week just feels like it's a little bit of a gamble here with the Cowboys.
Fair enough. And I was actually really surprised on that one there, right? Like I certainly know you're kind of all off season, the talk between Dak and your feelings on Dak, your feelings on Williams there. So a little surprised, but I have to agree, right? Like if this is the week that you're going to start him over Dak, this is the week, right? Like Tennessee's pass secondary has been awful. Like that pass defense has been awful for the last few years on this one. Yes, they've made some offseason moves, but I don't know. I don't know how much we're going to really see that translate here to that. And I want to see it. I want to see a team that's been bad at a position or as a grouping for a little while. I want to see them actually make those changes before I got to start jumping on that bandwagon there. So, yeah, I would lean Caleb Williams this week over Dak. It is really close. Both of those guys would not surprise me if we're talking QB2 type of finishes on the week, right? Like I think we probably see Caleb Williams in the 13-14 type of range, and we see Dak more in the like 14, 15, 16 type of range on this particular week when it's all said and done. So
I think we've seen QBs 1 through 4 in the first 2 games of the season for week 1.
Yep. There's a very real possibility of that one. So
I think that, in my opinion, the only game that gives you a shot for something better might be the Rams-Lions game Sunday night.
Right. That one will be a good one. That one will be a lot of fun. All righty. Any other thoughts on the Caleb and Dak question?
Negative, Ghost Rider.
All righty. For Shizzle is saying what a game to that Green Bay and Philadelphia finish there. I would have to agree. It'll be interesting, right? We saw we saw Jordan Love go down about 5 seconds left of that game with a lower body injury, leg type of injury there, helped off the field. So it'll be interesting to see what those reports come out of after the game and leading up to those injury reports to see how that what that injury is and how serious it may be. But something worth keeping an eye on, especially if you've got Green Bay on your fantasy rosters, because the backup, we saw Malik Willis come in and get sacked. So yeah, be interesting to see how that one finishes and what that turnout is.
Wolf, that really changes the perspective of what Green Bay is if Jordan Love is set back for any amount of time.
Correct. Yes. Jelly the Month saying that they missed out on tight end, half point PPR, Freiermuth, and not sure QB or Taysom Hill. So at this point, Jelly of the Month, if you're going that route, you're playing more of a streaming type of deal. Between the two, for me, they are kind of back to back in my rankings. I'd probably lean the Freiermuth, but it is really close.
I'm going Taysom.
Thinking touchdown upside.
Touchdown upside. Taysom.
Yeah.
He's constantly more involved in that offense. And it's not like the Saints are offensive juggernauts, but I do think the Saints playing in this kind of Kubiak style offense leads towards more opportunities than what the Steelers are going to give you here. So at least this week, I'd play Taysom, see what happens.
Okay. Alrighty, and then Josh was asking thoughts on the team. They had the second pick, and this was the team again. The 16-person PPR with Dak, Caleb Williams, Achane, Zeke, CD, DJ Moore, Njoku, and Tank Dell.
Is it had the second pick? So you took Achane. Oh no, you took CD. Never mind. I see that. Sorry. Okay. Honestly, I don't mind it. I mean, it's impressive that you got Caleb and Dak in a 16-team league. So obviously, kudos to you. I think it kind of came with the sacrifice of a second running back. But nevertheless, I think for 16 teams, you definitely have upside, right? CD's upside, Achane's upside, DJ Moore. You like to think that him and Caleb Williams will come up with some rapport with his high-paid receiver. So you'd like to think there's something there. Tank Dell's interesting. I know we've kind of touched on the Texans and what they have or haven't done with personnel here the last couple shows leading up to our Friday night shows, but with them getting rid of their fullbacks and going more 13 personnel, I think that gives Tank Dell some upside here, as teams are really probably going to focus in on Nico and Stephon Diggs here to start. I think it does give Tank Dell some slot or some flex spot viability.
I like it. Yeah, I would agree. I think that you've got some upside. You've got some floors built in there too, to it. So I do like some teams that have a little bit of floor built in with some upside on top of it. So I'm interested to see how that team competes and turns out. I think it'll do all right for you, Josh. And then Kevin Jelly of the Month chiming in here with a question that is, I feel, just tailor-made for you, and a point that you were bringing up. I believe it was on the Tuesday show. But he's asking do you like Marshawn Lloyd as a backup? Not sure if Philly's run D was that good or if Jacobs just looked a little washed.
I think Jacob had plenty of opportunities. I think they were geared in for Jacobs. They kind of knew what they had. So, Lloyd was inactive for the game, nursing an injury. So he was out. I think long term, I think he produces some sleeper capabilities as we get later into the season. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot out of him here for the first few weeks. But if he can get healthy, and that was his issue through camp, right? He got dinged up and wasn't kind of there the whole time. So if he can get healthy and find his way into the good graces of the coaching staff, he'll see some playing time, and I do think you'll like what you see. You'll see some goal line carries out of him, so he'll be able to be kind of a touchdown sniper when you get put in a pinch if you need to play him. But ultimately, Jacobs was a little washed last year. It looked a little washed last year. This year, I thought you had glimpses of, but it's definitely troublesome that, I mean, in the first 2 drives, they had 3 or 4 opportunities with very short fields because of the turnovers, and they weren't able to get touchdowns, in large part because they couldn't get a first down when they were inside of, they had 2nd and 3, 3rd and 1, and that type of thing, and they could not get the chains moved.
All righty, I like it. All righty, so guys, if you have any other questions, comments, make sure we're tossing them in the chat. Happy to rock and roll and chat about those throughout the night here. We're gonna go ahead and hit up our next matchup and keep rolling here with some of the Sunday slate here. And let's go ahead and head on over to the next matchup here. We got the New York Footballing Giants taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota is favored by 1.5. The over/under on this one, 41. Thoughts on this game?
I'm going to take Minnesota, and I'm taking the over. I think it's a situation where both teams are just bad defensively. And when that typically happens, I'm going to lean towards the offense to find a way to get points. So, obviously, Minnesota has the better all-around skill position advantage with Addison and Justin Jefferson. So we're going to see how that plays out. But I'm going to take a gamble here on the over. I think we find a way to get to it. As ugly as it might be. But I'm also going to take Minnesota to cover this 1.5. I think they win this game by 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is a Minnesota victory to get that ball rolling on a different note this season than what they got started off with last season. But this is one of those that from an offensive standpoint, I'm inclined to tune in just to see what this is truly going to look like, because neither one of these offenses are really any. I think they're both going to have a lot of opportunities when it's all said and done here. But and because of that, even though there's a lot of defensive kind of woes and question marks for both of these squads, I've got to lean on the under. I just don't know that we're going to see these offenses be able to sustain the drives to be able to put points on the board. So I'm going to lean on the under. I'm going to lean Minnesota for the to cover the points there. This one here has the feel for me of a 14 to 10, 17-14 type of game. Like, I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be low scoring. One of the props that I really liked though was Aaron Jones to go over 13.5 receiving yards.
I like that one. I'm taking Sam Darnold to go over 228.5 passing. I feel like with the weapons he has outside and with the lack of presence from the cornerbacks on the Giants, Jefferson and Addison are going to get plenty of opportunities. And I think I keep saying that. I think Darnold is just going to be better than what people expect him to be. I'm banking on the fact that he learned a ton in San Francisco underneath Kyle Shanahan and kind of that the way that he teaches quarterbacks and everything else, and that he's carrying that with them, because I'm also in the boat that I believe he was going to beat McCarthy outright. And now they blame it on the injury that Darnold's the starting quarterback and it's not JJ McCarthy. I don't think McCarthy was going to be the starter from the get-go. So this gives him an opportunity to show it. Yeah, maybe he's looking for a job because Minnesota wants McCarthy to be the guy. But we've seen stranger things, right? There's not that much of a difference between those two quarterbacks. And if Sam Darnold plays well enough, there's no reason why he couldn't hold on to that starting job for this season and possibly next if JJ McCarthy's rehab is not going the way the Vikings want it to.
All right, I like it. All right, let's go ahead and head on into the next matchup here. We have New Orleans Saints taking on the Carolina Panthers. New Orleans is favored by 4. The over/under on this one, 42. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking New Orleans in this one, but I am taking the under. I'm not going to believe in the Panthers offense until I see it. So I think New Orleans win this game. Kind of like what you were thinking before, Derek. Like I could see this one being, 20-16 or something like that. 20, even 21-17, something like that, but about a 4-point game. So I think the spread's close, so a push gets my money back. 5 points is kind of a weird score to win by, but I'm going for the push here because I don't like Carolina to cover the 4 more than anything else. So we're going to see how it shakes out, but we'll say New Orleans and the under.
I like it. I'm going to take New Orleans as well. Yeah, again, kind of that weird kind of point total there, but I do think that New Orleans is going to manage to get that job done. I don't. Part of that is the fact that again, right? Like I was saying saying earlier, that when you've got some of these teams and some of these kind of squads that have been bad for a while, I want to see the change and the difference before I kind of buy into that one. And the Panthers have been bad for a long time. So several question marks going into this game. What does Bryce Young actually look like? What does this offense, how's that going to look and work and operate and the changes there, right? They've got a new coaching staff, new scheme, new philosophy. But we'll see how this thing really truly looks and works. So I'm going to take New Orleans. I do think that we see just enough kind of messing around in this game that we're going to see it just get to the over on this one. Yeah, this one's not going to surprise me if we see a 24-18 type of game. Like I could see that one coming through as well. Like it just gives me that feel of we're going to have kind of that wonky type of score when this one's all said and done. So I think we're going to mess around and get to the over. One of the props that I really like is Alvin Kamara to go over 51.5 rushing yards.
I like that in this new system. I'm taking Chris Olave over 63.5 receiving yards. The cast of receivers around him, whether it's Rashid Shaheed or A.T. Perry or Juwan Johnson, all these guys have spent time being hurt, right? Is kind of what my point is. So Chris Olave and Derek Carr showed some chemistry last year. They had camp to work on it again, and he's the one who's remained healthy through the group. So I think Chris Olave, they're going to find ways to scheme him open off the play action mainly, and he's going to have himself a really solid day.
I like that. All righty, let's go ahead and hit up the Cincinnati Bengals and the New England Patriots. Cincinnati is favored by 8.5. The over/under is 41 in this one. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking New England to cover this 8.5. This T. Higgins news is bothersome. I'm not convinced that Chase isn't going to just try and stick it to him and sit out this one game because of the contract dispute and just forfeit the game check to see if he can lose the battle to win the war and kind of show that they need him. So there's a built-in narrative a little bit, but I think New England covers is 8.5. Like offensively, no, it's not going to be good, but defensively, you expect New England to be good. They haven't turned over a whole bunch of that defense. Obviously, Gerard Mayo was a centerpiece of that defense under Bill Belichick for a long time, and I expect him to bring kind of a passion and a presence there to help the defense keep it closer. And I hate the number. 8.5 is a dirty number for a football game because that means it has to be 9, and games don't really end in 9. That's kind of a weird thing. So then you're thinking 10, and I definitely don't think the Bengals win by 10. So, Kevin math. So that's kind of how it's working in my brain. But I'm taking New England to cover this 8.5. I'm taking the under. I don't think there's going to be many points scored here.
Right. When I initially looked at this one, and I went through and changed it very recently, but like when I initially looked at this thing, I was like, oh yeah, Cincinnati's going to smash this one. I'll go ahead and take this one. I'm not going to surprise me when we get to a double-digit win on this thing here, right? And Cincinnati may put up enough points to get to around that 40 by themselves. Like, okay, let's go. And then as the news has kind of broken here, with the T. Higgins injury, with the Jamar Chase news that you hit on. That does worry me quite a bit in this one. So, because outside of those guys, Zach Moss and Chase Brown, there's a lot of question marks there as far as what that running back's going to look like and that run game's going to look like. Several question marks around this offensive line. Like I'm going to lean the New England route here and just anticipate that they cover the 8.5. And I do think you're right. I think we're going to see a very low scoring game on this one. But several of the props that I liked, there are several New England wide receivers that had juicy kind of props on that one. And the one I really liked was Pop Douglas to go over 36.5 receiving yards.
So I like that one. I liked mine as well, just because it's a lower number. But Jalen Polk over 29.5 receiving yards. Like,
yeah.
This isn't a whole lot, guys. And if we're expecting Cincinnati to be comfortably in the lead, the Patriots are going to have to abandon the run game a little bit to, get back in there, if you will, right? If they're trailing by 10 early and they just kind of keep it at pace, well, to try and chew into that, you got to throw the ball and save some clock. So I think both these guys are going to go over it, Derek.
Yeah, I looked at that one and I was back and forth between those two as to which one I was going to call the shot on and just settled on the Pop Douglas one because I think we'll probably see him on the field a little bit more. So I felt a little more comfortable that way. But both of those ones are super juicy and I like it. All righty, let's go ahead and hit up the next matchup we've got. We've got Chicago and Tennessee squaring off. Chicago is favored by 3.5. The over-under is 45. Thoughts on this one?
Taking Chicago. Again, Caleb Williams, first start against the Titans. Okay, fine. Both teams kind of have a new receiving core around them for their young quarterbacks. And I think both teams are going to try and air it out a little bit. And see what the other ones have. I do think the Bears defense in the secondary is slightly better, so they're going to give Will Levis a few more issues than I think what Tennessee is going to be able to give Caleb Williams. So I'm taking Chicago, but I am taking the over 45. I think it's just going to be over on this one.
I like it. I'm also taking Chicago on this one and taking the over as well. I do think that we're going to see the shootout kind of ensue in this one, right? Like this one's not going to surprise me if we see this thing go even north of 50 points when it's all said and done here. I do like Chicago to end up pulling that one out and covering the points there. One of the props that I really liked, even though, a little bit more of a shootout, things like that, I do think that Will Levis has a really juicy rushing prop line of going over 8.5 rushing yards. This again, one of those that he's got enough legs that if the protection breaks down, we could see him scamper out and scramble for a first down type of thing and could take care of this all in one play. So those are the props I really like, is when it could happen over just a course of one play.
No, absolutely. I'm taking Will Levis under 238.5 passing. I feel like that number's just a little bit too big here. Again, the Chicago defense is better than I think what a lot of people are giving them credit for, just because it's a bunch of unsung heroes, right? Some names that just aren't familiar with the normal fan. And I think Vegas is trying to tee in on that a little bit, but I think Levis is going to have a little bit more difficulty throwing the ball than being able to get to 239.
I like it. Let's go ahead and we'll hit up the next matchup here. We've got the Buffalo Bills and the Arizona Cardinals squaring off. The Bills favored by 6.5. The over-under on this one, 47.5. Thoughts on this one?
This line makes no sense to me. None. It really doesn't. So I'm not a believer in what the Bills are going to be starting the season with. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions that we need to figure out. Arizona obviously kind of re-energized with Marvin Harrison Jr. You're bringing back a couple of the other receivers, whether it's Michael Williams or
Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson.
That's right. Greg Dortch. Sorry, that's what I was thinking of. And you still have James Conner. You have Trey Benson behind him. So, and not to mention, you have a amazing, an amazing tight end there in Trey McBride. So I'm taking Arizona to cover. Wouldn't surprise me if they win this game outright to start the season. And I'm taking the over. I do think we're going to see some points in this game. Ultimately, Arizona's going to at least cover, and it wouldn't surprise me if they win. I really like that plus 240 on the money line for Arizona in this game.
Yeah, I that was one that I really liked as well. When I do think that Arizona is going to keep this game incredibly tight. We saw when Kyler came back last year that Arizona team was still kind of transformed and started keeping games much tighter, much closer, winning more games down the stretch there. And I do think that he certainly can make a difference. In this one, and very interested to see what the chemistry looks like here between Kyler and McBride and Harrison Jr. and see how these things really kind of shake out here in the first week. So very excited to watch this matchup, but I do think Arizona keeps this thing tight. I do think that the over comes into play. This is one where Arizona doesn't necessarily have a great defensive unit out there. Buffalo has had a lot of turnover in its defense in the last few years here as well. So I do think that we're going to see plenty of points put up in this one. Not going to surprise me if this thing comes down to like a 30-27 type of matchup. Like I think there's going to be points galore in this one. One of the props that I really liked was James Cook to go over 17.5 receiving yards.
No, I like that one. Another one that I liked and happened to be on the Buffalo side also was Curtis Samuel over 28.5 receiving yards. I think we're going to see this spread out a little bit, and Samuel should have a little bit more familiarity with this offense than what Coleman or Shakir might have with all the years he spent with Joe Brady in Washington.
Fair enough. Yeah, I really like that one as well. And almost went that route, but that James Cook and lower number called my name. But I really like that prop for Curtis Samuel as well. All righty, let's go ahead and hit up the next matchup here. We have the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans. Texans favored by 3. The over/under is 49 on this one. Thoughts?
I'm taking Houston and the over. I think this could be a big shootout for us as well, especially if Anthony Richardson can actually like get through the entire game. The way he can move his legs, I think what it opens up for Jonathan Taylor on the Colts side. We've spent a ton of time talking about Houston, as most shows have at this point, and so now we need to see it put in action. So I'm going to take Houston to start the season off with a win here and cover this 3-point spread. But I am taking the over because I'm not convinced that their defense is as good as we think their offense is.
Fair enough. I like the Houston call there. I do think that they're going to come out and win this thing kind of just going away. I do think that we see the under when this thing comes to play, right? Like one of the big question marks that I still have about Anthony Richardson entering the season is what does the progressions look like when going through the passing game? What does look like? There's a couple of things that looking to see how that offense is truly being run with everybody healthy and in place here. Because we haven't really seen that going back to last year, right? Like a lot of the games that Richardson was in, we didn't see Jonathan Taylor and kind of vice versa. And Taylor coming back from his injury there as well. So there's a whole lot of a lot of question marks to this one. And I want to see what that passing development really kind of looks like there in Indy. So I do think that we're going to see the under on this one. I think it's going to be close. Like this is a game that it's not going to surprise me if we see a 20, call it a 27 to 20, 27-21 type of deal. So I think that we get just to the under when this thing's all said and done. But I really like the prop on Joe Mixon to go over 13.5 receiving yards.
Right on. I'm taking Anthony Richardson under 231.5 passing yards. I think his legs are going to be a big factor. I'm interested to see if he's going to throw for that many, if he can have as many completions as he needs to get to 231 or 232, really. So definitely interested in that. But I think I stayed away from his rushing prop on purpose. But I do think he comes in just under on this passing prop.
I like that one as well, right? And kind of goes into what I'm thinking, that I want to see what he actually looks like as a passer, and is he making the progressions? Is he hitting the receivers, or is he throwing the spots type of thing? So very interested to see how that one comes to be. All right, let's go ahead and take a look here at our next matchup. We've got the Los Angeles Chargers and the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chargers are favored by 3. The over-under on this one is 40.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm going to take the Chargers here to start the season. I'm just not convinced that the Raiders offensively are going to be able to um, put up enough points here. So I'm taking the under, another low scoring affair here to start the season in the AFC West. But I think the ground and pound of Harbaugh is going to win out here, and the Chargers are going to be able to cover this and win the football game.
Fair enough. This was one I was certainly torn on when I was looking at it, but I ended up settling on Las Vegas, right? Call it the Minshew mania coming, effect type of thing, or what that looks like. But the fact that Herbert has certainly has been banged up a lot of the offseason here. There's the Chargers defense. Kind of some questions that I have around this one, and can they really truly slow people down? What's that's going to look like. But I do think that at 40.5, I feel like we can sneeze and get to the get just over that. And it may take somebody just kind of making a missed couple of missed assignments there to have that thing carry over there. But yeah, the prop is so low. I'm going on the over there. But one of the props that I really like was Lad McConkey to go over 37.5 receiving yards. This is one of those that I think we'll see him eat and get enough receptions. Not going to surprise me if we look up and we actually see him get 5, 6, 7 receptions when this thing's all said and done. And if he's getting that kind of volume, he'll easily clear that 37.5 receiving yards.
Oh, very good. Very good. I'm taking Jacoby Myers over 42.5. I feel like the Raiders are going to be trailing in this game late, and they're going to have to be passing to catch up. So it's either Adams or Myers, and Myers has a much easier, much more obtainable number here in week 1 than I felt like Devontae Adams had.
Yeah, I like that call. Like that call a lot. Let's go ahead and hit up the question coming in here. Bang over on Twitch is saying thoughts on Jaden Reed going off tonight. What do you think? Can he repeat this? They're salty because he was on the bench for 2 of the leagues. Thoughts on Jaden Reed?
So I think that we're going. Depends on the Jordan Love injury, right? If Malik Willis is your quarterback, Jaden Reed becomes irrelevant, at least in the short term. So we're going to say that Jordan Love's going to be healthy and he's going to be playing the full season. I think Reed is always going to be involved in this offense one way or another. I do think it's going to vary week to week on how much, right? Like we saw Dobbs with more targets. We saw Christian Watson with more targets. Reed had a 70-yard reception and a 23 or 33, whatever it was, yard rushing touchdown, right? So you take that, 2 plays made up 90% of his yardage for week 1. Not quite 90%. He caught a big one late for another 33 yards or so. So maybe not quite 90%, 80%. So it's not that Jaden Reed's not going to get used. He will be in the fold week in and week out. I just don't know if you can count on home run plays as a strategy. We like upside, and Jaden Reed does pose the upside. He's probably the fastest of the Green Bay receivers. So him in a flex spot isn't a bad idea when you feel like he has a better matchup. But I don't know that you can bank on the fact that he's going to have 160 total yards and 2 touchdowns week in and week out.
Yeah, it's certainly certainly a tougher deal there, right? When you got a guy that kind of blows up, which it was kind of very similar, right? Like
to Xavier Worthy.
Exactly, right? Like,
Yeah, they both scored on an end around. They both got a touchdown. I mean, now Jaden Reed's was longer than Xavier Worthy's, but same type of deal. They both scored on an end around because defenses aren't used to the speed yet, right? And as fast as Xavier Worthy and Jaden Reed are, they caught the edge. They made a guy miss, two guys miss at times. I think both of them did, and they got in. I just don't know that you can bank on that. They're fun to watch, and if he is in your lineup, then great. I'll sit there with you.
right.
I made the decision that I was going to play Calvin Ridley over Jaden Reed this week. So I sat Jaden Reed in a work league and played Calvin Ridley instead. And I'm kicking myself a little bit too for it, but I want to see what Calvin Ridley does. I want to see what this Jordan Love injury does. Like, just because Reed went off this week doesn't mean I'm going to turn around and chase his points next week.
Right. And that's a very good point, right? Like 4 receptions, 138 yards when it's all said and done. That averages out to 34.5 yards a reception, right? Like that isn't sustainable. What is sustainable is around 4 to 5 receptions, which I think that we're going to see, right? If Jordan Love's healthy and this offense operates the way that we would anticipate, I think it's very likely that we see Jaden Reed in the averaging 5 receptions a game. I think that's pretty much what you can bank on week in, week out, right? But with that, the home run play is going to vary greatly on this one, whether it's a 5 for 50 or 5 for 120, right? Like that's going to be the range of outcomes to it. And the only thing that's going to kind of solidify that and make that where it's a weekend or it's a usable type of performance is if one of those comes with a touchdown grab as well, right? Like, and we saw Jaden Reed do very well last season when it came to getting into the end zone, right? Like this was a guy that managed to get up into wide receiver 2 territory when it was all said and done on lower volume, lower yards, but got there because of the touchdowns to it. So there's potential for it, right? This Green Bay offense has the ability to be very high powered and explosive and put points on the board and put touchdowns in the end zone, but that's where it's going to come to. And this is going to be one of those that you don't want to have to really bank on that to be your, wide receiver 2, or if it's a, wide receiver 2 type of option, he is certainly worth a flex type of play, week in, week out. Like that's where it's going to be in your playing matchups. So that's kind of our thoughts on that. Any other thoughts before we move on over to the next question?
No, sir.
All right, let's go ahead and hit up Johnny over on the YouTube. PPR, are we still starting Burrow or should they chance it with Caleb Williams?
I'm chancing it with Caleb Williams. With the Higgins injury and not knowing if Jamar Chase is actually going to play, and even if he does, what that first week of chemistry looks like, since the two of them have not been running reps together in camp yet this season. There's a little bit of rust that's going to get knocked off. If Higgins were playing, I'd tell you play Burrow, because it just felt like Higgins was destined to have a pretty big game and carry that. But now I'm pivoting a little bit, and I think Caleb Williams is probably the right play. He's been with all of his guys the entire offseason. They've all been healthy. They've all been at camp every day. Like, just some of that early season camaraderie that you need to kind of get an edge. I think Caleb Williams has it, even though he's a rookie. So for this week, I think I'm going Caleb Williams. And there's nothing saying that the Bengals still don't get ahead relatively early and then just lean on Chase Brown and Zach Moss. Right. If they do get the lead, like, they're banking on their defense to hold the Patriots. The Bengals are banking on their defense to hold the Patriots under 13 points. So it's a race to like 17 if you're the Bengals. And after that, you're running the damn ball. Like, get out of town. Let's see what these injuries and contract disputes and everything else look like, and we survive in advance.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's a excellent point there, right? Like the point total in Cincy in the Cincy Patriots game, the over-under on that's 41, right? Whereas the Bears-Titans, you're looking more to 45, right? So an anticipated higher point total in the Bears and Titans type of matchup there. Couple that with the fact that, an anticipated closer game between the two, right? The Bengals have a almost a 9-point spread. The Bears-Titans about a 4-point spread on this thing. So you're going to see kind of all facets of the offense still utilized, likely into the fourth quarter in that Bears Titans game, right? There's a good chance that, like you were just saying, there's a good chance that you may see the Bengals get into the fourth quarter and it's nothing but 3 yards in a cloud of dust every play, and effectively taking Joe Burrow out of that deal.
Oh, yeah. Or 3 to 5 yard dumps to Tyler Irwin and whichever tight ends on the field.
Right. So I would lean the Caleb Williams route. I realize how one of those that when you say it off the top of your head like that without thinking it sounds a little scary, but
the path to points is easier for Caleb Williams right now.
Correct.
That's really what it is, right? I mean, the path to fantasy points for Caleb Williams is greater right now. He's going to use his legs a little bit more than Joe Burrow does. He has all of his options. Joe Burrow is not going to have all of his options. It just is more of a risk.
Right. I really didn't think we'd get to week 1 and be advising people to start a rookie quarterback over some of these veteran guys and some of these guys that we're super high on through the fantasy draft process and all that. Just matchups.
This is why matchups and pivot, right? This is why, we don't ever say ever. We just don't like the idea of doing it. But these are situations that have to be accounted for, right? The Cowboys have a really tough road matchup week 1, and the Bengals are down 1, if not both, of their top receivers. Like, to me, that screams pivot, right? It's going to be safer, and there's a clear path for Caleb Williams.
I would agree. All righty. And then we've got hoops over on YouTube as well. So should I start? Yeah, Burrow or Stafford? I
don't even think this is close.
The rankings would tell you that it should be like Burrow over Stafford when you look at consensus type of rankings and all of that. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that Detroit and Rams is going to be on the very high scoring affair side of things.
Yeah, and you can see 55, 57 points in that game easily, back and forth.
Yeah, and I'm not going to surprise me. We look up at the end of that game and we see a 60 plus burger on the board. So
that'd be fun. Sunday Night Football to start the season. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd like that. So,
but yeah, Stafford this week for me. Again, he has his options. He has Cooper Kupp. He has Kyron Williams. Puka Nacua is off the injury list. He's going to be playing. Yeah, Blake Corum. Like, their defense isn't as good as it used to be, so they're going to give up points to Detroit. So they're going to have to keep moving the ball to stay in it. I like the path for Stafford to have over 20 fantasy points more than Joe Burrow.
Right. I like it. All right, let's go ahead and we'll hit up the next matchup here real quick. We got Jamie in the chat. Welcome in, Jamie, saying, "Yo, dudes." Welcome back in, Jamie. Let's go ahead and head on over into our next matchup, and we've got Seattle Seahawks taking on the Denver Broncos, and Seattle is favored by 6. The over/under on this one, 41.5. Thoughts on this one?
I don't like this number. So for Seattle to cover, they have to win the game by a touchdown, and I don't think they're going to win the game by a touchdown. So I'm going to take the Broncos by default because of that. I am going to take the over, though. I think the Denver's offense showed me just enough in the preseason that I expect them to be able to put some points up on the board. So regardless of what you think about the game, if you think the Broncos can get to 23, that means most likely we're over. Right? And I do. I think the Broncos can find a way to get to 23. So that tells me that the game is over.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, I think if the Broncos get to even 20, Like that over gets carried over on this one, right? Like, so it's, and so I'm right there with you on that train of thought. I really like the over on this one. And I think you're right. I think we saw just enough out of the Broncos offense here during the preseason and that we could anticipate that getting to 20 plus points in this one. So I do think that this is a field goal game when it's all said and done. So I'm going to take Denver with the points. I'm going to take the over. I think this one, when it's all said and done, is probably a 23-20, 21-24 type of ordeal. One of the props that I really liked, and I just felt like this one was incredibly low with how I think we're going to see this Broncos offense run, was Bo Nix going over 200.5 passing yards. This might be one of those that we don't necessarily see this picked up in chunks, but it wouldn't surprise me when we look up at the end of this game and we see Bo Nix near a 70% completion percentage, and he just dinked and dunked 5 to 6 yards down the field all game long, and managed to put together enough of those to go over 200 yards.
Yeah. I think as long as he's converting third downs, the Broncos faithful will stay off of him and give him a bit of time to learn here. So I'm going to kind of parlay with yours. I'm taking Javonte Williams over 2.5 receptions. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to run the ball in this game, which, is to be expected in Seattle, all the things. But I also think Javonte is going to get involved in the passing game a little bit more this year, at least to some extent. But I think 3 receptions is well within the realm of possibilities.
I like it. Jamie saying, let's get it for JSN. And the matchup between JSN and Jaquan McMillan could be one to watch. I would agree. McMillan, Denver's projected nickelback, allowed Elijah Moore to catch 5 passes last season, which suggests that Smith-Njigba has a solid chance to make an impact. Very well could.
I completely agree with that assessment. If there is a Seahawks receiver that I think is going to go off, if you will, I do think it's JSN and not DK or Tyler Lockett this week.
Right. Yeah, I think DK will get a whole lot of Patrick Surtain treatment here, and so that could be a very interesting thing to see on that matchup there as well. All righty, great comments there, Jamie. Love seeing those come in. All right, let's go ahead and hit up the next matchup here. We've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Washington Commanders, and Tampa Bay favored by 3.5. The over under 42.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking Tampa. I'm not a believer in this Commanders defense at all. So I'm going to take Tampa to be able to start the season off here on the right foot. I'm taking the under because I don't think the Commanders are going to be scoring a whole lot of points. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was, 20-13, 20-10, something like that here to start the season. So Tampa in the under for me.
I like it. I'm right there with you with the Tampa. I think that they're gonna go in there and win that one, and definitely be able to put up the points there. I do think that we see just enough out of this Commanders offense to put up just enough points though to carry us into the over. This is a matchup that's not going to surprise me. We look up and we see this thing in the 24-20 type of realm. So I do think that we see that kind of rock and roll there. I'm very interested to see what this version of Cliff Kingsbury's offense looks like. Looks like as well. This is one of those that we've seen him kind of do it before with a rookie quarterback with Kyler, right? And seeing what that translates and how that looks different in Washington versus when it was in Arizona. And we've also seen him kind of parlay some of these college trips and experiences to, have some pretty decent your college quarterbacks there as well. So I'm interested to see the wrinkles and the iterations and the changes on that one as well. But one of the props that I really liked on this one was Jaden Daniels to go under 39.5 rushing yards.
No. I kind of went the homer route on this one because I have Chris Godwin in the home league and I need him to do well for me here. So I'm taking Godwin over 58.5 receiving yards.
I like that. Yeah, I think we'll see him have a good game, especially with some of him lining up out of the slot like we've been hearing all off season here. And I think that does very big things for him. Jamie chiming in saying that Mike Evans has a good matchup this week against Michael Davis. Davis is more of an average quarterback and often has trouble with bigger, more talented receivers. I expect big numbers and big plays with Evans exploiting Davis early and often.
I like that because I have a lot of Mike Evans too. Like
Yes.
just throw the ball. Like Rashad White's the one Tampa Bay player I didn't get my hands on a whole lot this year just because of how I was drafting in most leagues. So I'm all about the Tampa Bay passing game this year, whether it's Baker or Godwin or Mike Evans. Just let them throw the ball 55 times a game. I don't care.
Right. Jamie's also calling a shot on McLaurin having a top 12 wide receiver week this week. Last season, Dean allowed almost 64% of completion on throws and gave up an average of 12.2 yards per reception. Jamie, I like that thought, and I may have to rethink my wide receiver strategy here in the home league. I may have to. We may have to be looking at that one. That is a really good point that I hadn't thought of. Anyway, more to come on that one. All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up our next matchup here. We have the Cowboys and the Browns. So Cleveland and Dallas squaring off here. Cleveland favored by 2.5. The over-under is 40.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking Cleveland by field goal. Just again, the Cowboys typically struggle during road season openers, and really, it's just they're a little clunky, right? The CD being gone for so much of it, yes, there's going to be time. Again, the Browns secondary might be the best secondary in the league with the trio of guys that they have. So I'm going to take Cleveland by a field goal. I think we find a way to get over this though. Like it wouldn't surprise me if it was, 21-17, maybe something like that, just to kind of, well, I guess it'd need to be more than that. 20, like 23-20, I guess is what I'm looking for, right? Over the 40 in Cleveland. So it should have some points, right? Defensive rust, speed of the game, that type of thing. But I think Cleveland's defense is going to give Dak a hell of a hard time too. And I think you could just as easily see Dak with 2 or even 3 turnovers in this game as you do with Dak having that many touchdowns.
Yeah. This is one that I really kind of torn on. And kept kind of going back and forth and back and forth, back and forth. I'm going to lean on Dallas to cover this thing, more so because I think this is going to be a 2-point game, 1-point game. Like I think this is going to come down to the very last play, and we're going to see somebody
2021 action.
Yes, like a missed field goal at this point could change the game, type of thing. Like I think this is going to be incredibly tight. This is a matchup that I'm really excited to be able to watch this weekend. The over, again, this is one of those that the over just seems so low that I would like to believe that some of these higher powered offenses, even though, right, like there's all of these things that could lead to a but in there. I do think that we're going to see the over, and I think we're going to see it get there, just on the barely over. But yeah, again, like I really do think this one could be a 20, 23, 22, a 21 type of matchup, a 22-20 type of matchup. Like this is going to be incredibly tight on this one, and it will be lower scoring, but I do think we get just over. One of the props I really liked has to go with the fact that, right, like we haven't seen CeeDee Lamb really, throughout training camp, did a lot of sitting out, has been on a workload management type of deal as they try and gear up for it, and all of the things there, to the point where I'm not buying that we're not going to see CeeDee Lamb go under 84.5 receiving yards in this one.
There you go. I'm taking Zeke over 9.5 carries. Like I feel like I feel like that's a low enough number. You could see him with 3 in the first quarter, 2 in the second quarter, 2 in the third, and 3 in the fourth, right? Like I don't feel like that's completely out of the realm of possibilities as the Cowboys try and stay balanced. They try and figure out what this run game's actually going to look like. We've heard this noise of Rico Dowdle, but Rico Dowdle, the Cowboys get inside the 5-yard line. you figure Zeke's getting at least 2 carries inside the 5 if the Cowboys can get in there. So that takes up, a fifth of what I need him to get. So it just seems too low. If this was 10.5, I might pivot a little bit. And if it was 11.5, I might be going on the under. But 9.5 for some reason seems to be like a sweet spot where I think he'll get to 10.
Right. Yeah, I think we could see him with double-digit carries. Yeah, I like that one. All right, let's. Jamie's saying that he'll take the Cowboys to win with the 2.5, but doesn't see the Browns winning, because the Browns have only won 2 home openers in the last 20 years. The 04 in the Ravens and last year against Cincy. All right, that very well could be. Tyler over on YouTube asking the question of, is Luke McCaffrey worth an ad as a starter now? You'd have to drop Hollywood Brown.
No. I do. I would much rather have a piece of the Chiefs offense in Hollywood Brown than a flyer on Luke McCaffrey. He was a little bit slow to come along here during camp here. So, as things shake out through the season, I think he's a guy to keep looking at, Tyler. But here in week 1, no, I'm not doing that.
Right. Yeah. So I'm right there with you, right? Luke McCaffrey was a guy that did a transition from into a wide receiver late into his college career. Yeah, it was one of those two that, coming in as a draft prospect, had a underdeveloped route tree on this one. So we've got a guy that's still kind of learning the position, learning how to do that. Certainly has the pedigree for it, with his dad being a former wide receiver and his brother being Christian McCaffrey, right? Like there's lots of things there that could help that along. But I'm right there with you, Kevin. I would far rather have a piece of Hollywood Brown than take the flyer on Luke McCaffrey there. And Tyler saying yes, it would be a flyer. So I like Jamie saying Noah Brown over Luke. It's an interesting one. All righty. So there we go. Let's go ahead and hit up the old Sunday night game here. Detroit Lions and the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are favored by 4.5. The over-under on this one, 52.5. Thoughts on this one?
Lions are favored by 4.5.
I'm sorry. Yes, they are.
I'm staring at this, and I don't know how I feel about this. I don't like this 4.5. It gives you a weird final score, and I don't know how I see that coming through. I think I'm going to pivot. I think I'm going to take the Rams to cover and change this in our record.
Yeah, this is one that
So I think I'm going to take the Rams to cover. I could see it being a 4-point game. I could see it being a 3-point game. I do see Detroit winning the game, but I think I'm going to say the Rams keep it under 5. And if we're projecting back and forth and high scoring and everything else, there's just too many probabilities that it's going to be less than that for both teams to continue to put up points in a way that we think we're going to go over this 52.5. And I do think it's going over the 52.5. So that tells me it needs to be back and forth and both teams are putting up points. And when that's the case, it's hard to get to a 5-point or more spread unless there's a late touchdown because the game's tied.
Yeah, unless you're Philly and Green Bay, as they managed to do exactly 5 tonight. But that was, again, right, kind of a weird scoring thing.
It's because Green Bay went for 2 and missed it.
Mm-hmm. Like it takes one of those kind of happenstances to go through to cause some of those things. So I'm right there with you. Like this was one of those that I was so on the Detroit side, earlier in the day. And as I keep thinking about this one and continue thinking about this, the more and more that I'm coming around to that thought process that this one here, I think, is going to be an incredibly tight game. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of back and forth. I think we're going to see a lot of points put up on the board. So I'm right there with you. I'm gonna jump off of the Detroit train, move on over to the Rams train here, and I think that we're going to see this thing in about a 3-point game. So I'm going to take the Rams getting the points on this one. One of the things that, the over on this one, again, not going to surprise me if we look up and see the end of this game be 34-30. Just something in that range there, right? Like I think that we're going to see a lot of points, 30, 34, 31. So I do like the over on this one. One of the props that I really liked is I like Jamar Gibbs to go under 59.5 rushing yards. I know that is a, not a popular take amongst the fantasy community with the Jamar Gibbs slander, so to speak there. But that's what it seems like anytime you give a not glowing review there. But I do think that we're going to see Monty get his fair share of work here. And I do think that Jamar Gibbs goes just under the 59.5. Not going to surprise me if we see him break 50 yards, but I do think that we're going to see Monty put up 70 or 80 yards on the ground here. And that certainly eats into the workload that Jamar Gibbs will see.
Yes. I'm going to take Cooper Kupp over 67.5 receiving yards. So I know people have softened a little bit on Puka because of the injury and everything else. I've been on Kupp all along. All of our documented shows show that, right? I'm not flippy flopping. I just think Kupp is the guy in LA for the Rams here until he's not on the field. So with that being the case, I'm taking Kupp over 67.5. I think he has himself a good, strong game to start the season against Detroit.
Yeah, I really like that one. I think that we're going to see Kupp closer to 90 to 100 yards when it's all said and done. So I feel like that. I feel like that is incredibly low number there. So
I like it.
I like it. All right. Let's go ahead. We got Jamie saying that he thinks Monty's going to have 2 touchdowns in this game. Yeah, I could see it. All right, they get down inside the 10, the 5. Very well could rock and roll it that way. Jamie also giving us a hot take here. Says Corum outscores Kyron this William, and Kyron has as much value as James Robinson in 2026.
Yeah, it is a hot take, right? I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. But yeah, I think there's value in James Robinson in 2026. That's saying something, right? Because basically you're saying nada here in 2 years. So we'll see how it shakes out. I know to start with, McVay's messing with everybody. Everybody was freaking out that Blake Kyron Williams was like, oh my God, he's going to be returning punts and doing all this. Well, Blake Corum's on the kickoff team. Like, they're both going to be returning kicks. It's just putting his dynamic playmakers in a spot to be able to get their hands on the ball. So, health is going to be a big part of this for both of these guys. Corum doesn't really seem to have the injury history that Kyron got dinged up a little bit last year and everything else. So we're going to see how it goes. But I'm interested to see how the Rams use this backfield, because traditionally Sean McVay's leaned on one guy pretty hard. So it will be a change of pace from what his status quo is if both of them are on the field roughly the same amount.
I like it. Jamie saying, oh, hey, just noticed it's my birthday today. Hey, there you go. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
All righty. And then Tyler, as the question, Kevin, off topic, still talking football, so I don't know if it's that off topic. Tyler saying that they're a Kentucky fan and asking if you're ready for the game next week.
Yeah, Kentucky's always a tough one, man. Kentucky plays Georgia tight. They play very physical. It's always a game that, both teams come out of that pretty beat up and battered from how they play each other. Obviously, one of Georgia's quarterbacks transferred out into Kentucky with Vandergriff, and he looked pretty good there in week 1 for the Wildcats. So, I look forward to every Georgia game, man. So yes, I'm absolutely looking forward to it. And Kentucky's no slouch. They do a good job. Stoops has done a good job building a physical program over there. It's just a matter of, it's a war of attrition, right? Like, can they keep up for 4 quarters? That's always been the deal with Kentucky. They give Georgia hell for half, 3 quarters, even into the fourth. But it's just kind of that war of attrition that we saw with Clemson, right? It's 4 quarters of having to deal with the best in the country, and not many teams can do that.
Right. And Tyler's saying that they always play one good half. So, and hopefully Brock and so.
Well, a couple of years ago, what was it? Maybe it's 2 years ago, maybe 3. It was like pouring, stinking down rain in Kentucky. It was an ugly game, and it was something like 17-13 or whatever. Like, I was nail biting that one a little bit because Georgia's offense looked like poo. Kentucky was keeping it close, and it's that old, it's the old adage, Derek, right? Like, you keep someone hanging around long enough, and they're going to find a way, to kind of bite you in the backside. And I really thought that was going to happen. Georgia ended up squeaking it out late, but they've struggled with that, and they've had issues with Missouri for the exact same reason. They let Missouri hang around and do whatever, and then the overall talent finally takes over a little bit. But Missouri's another team that hasn't probably gotten enough credit, that plays Georgia really stinking tough.
Yeah. No, I understand all about the letting teams hang around. I'm fan of a team that forever didn't have a defense that if they weren't scoring on every ploy, there's a chance that they were going to lose the game at the end of it. So yes. So anyway, and then Jamie's saying it's all about the style of play with Kentucky basketball over their football program.
I mean,
is it that way anymore? They didn't ride the head coach of the football program out after.
I'd tell you that their football program has just as many blue chip recruits as their basketball program does now.
Yeah. And then big difference. Tyler's saying big difference with us, meaning Kentucky, is our new offensive coordinator from Boise plays a very fast pace. So it'll be good. It'll be interesting, and excited to see some.
Fast is good until your defense gets tired.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
All of
I
those.
mean, it is. We see that with Kiffin. It's one of two ways. Either the other team's defense gets tired, or your defense gets gassed because you can't put points on the board, and you're just sending them right back out to try and keep up.
Right. So it'll be good and interesting to see how that one comes to play, and very excited to also watch some games tomorrow there as well. All righty, let's go ahead and hit up this last slate on the week one. We got the Monday night game. We got the 49ers and the Jets. The 49ers are favored by 4.5. The over-under on this one is 44. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking the Niners. For as much as I didn't like it for the Rams and Lions, for some reason I don't mind it for the Niners and Jets. Like, defensive game, yes, but I do think the Niners are going to find a way to put this one away here late. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a tie game and if it's a late touchdown that does it, right? With a minute and a half left or whatever, and then their defense is just able to keep Rodgers and company out of the end zone. But I think it's going to be a good game. I'm taking the over just barely. Again, it wouldn't surprise me, 24, 20, 20, 28, 24, 27, 20, something in that kind of realm. Again, late scoring to be able to kind of put this over the top for the Niners. But I think it's a good Monday night matchup with some defensive juggernauts, if you will, that we haven't seen in week one just yet.
Right. Guys, I'm on the Jets side of this, just from the same standpoint that I switched over to the Rams, right? Like that 4.5, just, I don't want that 4.5 in the hook, right? Like that's just, no, thank you. So I'm going to lean on the
it's
Jets.
A dirty hook.
Yeah. Not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. So I'm gonna lean on the Jets here. I do think the under, right? Like this is two teams that have two incredibly good defenses. They both have some good offenses, but I think that we're going to see this thing really come to play, and this is going to be this is going to come down to somebody having to make a play to ultimately win their win their team the game. So I do think that this is going to be the under on this one. I'm not going to surprise me if we look up and this is a 24-20 matchup. Like, I could see a push on the totals on this one. I'm leaning the Jets just sort of being a closer scoring on this one. One of the props that I really like is CMC to go under 75.5 rushing yards. You've got kind of a couple of factors playing into this one. One, going up against an incredibly tough Jets defense. I think that they're going to do everything they can to try and slow that down, and really trying to do what they can to make Brock Purdy beat them when it comes to this. I do also, also a little bit of concern, a little bit of pause over some of the injury with CMC kind of that has just kind of lingered throughout the offseason here, and that soft tissue, the calf type of thing there. And really, I don't think we're going to necessarily see San Francisco really try and push him unless absolutely necessary here in week one. And I think they're going to try and slow play that a little bit more to preserve their superstar here.
Yeah, I think so. He's questionable on the injury report, right? Just due to the calf injury and them just not having him play 100% of the practice. So NFL guidelines state he has to be questionable, because he did sit out a portion of practice or whatever. But that's neither here nor there. But I do agree with you, Derek. I think CMC is going to be used maybe a little bit differently here in week one, maybe a little bit more in the passing game, so it's not just quite the grind. I think you'll see Jordan Mason take some of those big hits up the middle and let him try and smack around or get smacked around one or the other against this Jets defensive front. So for my prop, I'm going to go on the other side of the field, and I'm going to take Breece Hall over 24.5 receiving yards. We've seen Aaron Rodgers be able to do this with Aaron Jones in Green Bay many, many times. And Breece Hall is an overall more talented back, so it would not surprise me to see him be put in a couple really good spots to receive the ball in open space and get down the field for some chunk yardage.
I like it. Very cool. Any final thoughts on any of the games out there?
No, great slate for week one. This is what week one should look like, right? Like, every single primetime game is an amazing game. We're 2 for 2 on really good football games here to start the year, which I'm sure the NFL is just over the moon about, as far as them being close and competitive and marquee teams and everything else. But I think it's a good slate here to start the season and really puts contenders against each other to kind of see how things are going to shake out this year.
Right. Yeah, I like it as well. A couple of other comments coming in here. We have Tyler saying that they have CMC, and he did show up on the injury report. Yep, still been dealing with that injury all kind of off season here, or all camp. Jamie saying sit Ayuk versus the Sauce. Gardner allowing only a 58.6% catch rate and just 3.6 targets per game, so that doesn't equate to much fantasy points. You couple that too with the fact that Brandon Ayuk has not really been involved with the kind of that hold in and going through that contract dispute himself out there in San Francisco. So certainly some things that put some pause to that as well. Jamie, that's an interesting one. I didn't see I didn't find a Debo rushing line, but that could be an interesting deal there, especially if they're spelling CMC a little bit. And then Jamie saying that he ranked Ayuk outside the top 30.
Outside the top 30, huh?
Yeah, that is.
I guess I get it with Sauce, but I think they're gonna move. I think they're gonna move Ayuk around enough to where Sauce will be able to pivot between Debo and Ayuk. I think a little bit.
Right. So I think there is some of that we'll see some of that scheme to open there, but
yeah, I'm not seeing a Debo line here either.
Yeah, I was not able to find one when I was looking, so
Checking a couple different sites here real quick, just in case there is one.
yeah. Yep. I am not seeing one out there. So if anybody has one, I'm interested to see what that would be. So
Here we go. 10
all
and a
right.
half. 10 and a half rushing attempts. Hold on. No, rushing yards. The line for Deebo Samuel on BetMGM is 10 and a half.
Yeah.
There we go. Found it.
I kind of like that one too. That's an interesting little take there.
It's low enough, man. The way these end arounds have worked here in week one, it's definitely worth taking a flyer on. It's minus 115 either way. So, I mean, they're saying you got pretty even odds.
Yeah. Well, again, that kind of fits that one of those things that I kind of like when I look for some of those things. It could be taken care of in one play. So, yeah, those are some props that are fun to go with.
This one isn't bad. Debo's rushing plus receiving yards is at 61.5. I don't mind that one either.
Yeah, that's a nice one too. Alrighty. Well, guys, if you have any other questions, comments, anything like that, make sure we throw them in the chat. We're going to be wrapping it up here in just a moment and putting the first bet set snap week 1 in the books for 2024. But yeah, any kind of final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No, good luck in week 1. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up. We'll give our opinion and then kind of let you guys do with it what you will. And then, we'll see everybody back on Tuesday. Hopefully we'll have some more Jordan Love news to see how minor or serious this potential leg injury is. So, but once we know, we'll keep everybody posted. That way everybody can make the best fantasy decisions possible.
Absolutely. And then Jamie with the question there saying, you guys are awesome. Keep up the grind. Will do. Appreciate everybody tuning in, everybody with the questions, the comments. Really love that as we start getting going in the season and everybody having all of the questions come in. Jamie, the simple answer is no. No, it's not Malik Willis season. No.
I'm looking at Will Levis. I'm looking at Bo Nix. I'm looking at Derek Carr. I'm looking at, a whole slew of different options here before I'm sniffing around the Malik Willis tree. Gardner Minshew. A lot of different options I'm looking at first.
Yes, 100% on that one. So,
and this is probably the worst week to have a quarterback go down because there's so many teams that draft 2 because they don't know how to fill out their roster, right? And then as the weeks go on, more teams start dropping that second quarterback because they realize, oh, I need waivers and I don't need 2 quarterbacks, and they kind of go through that. So it's going to be interesting if they feel like Love does miss any time, because this first week of waivers for a quarterback sucks.
Yes. The 1 week that is awful with that.
Daniel Jones. You'd be grabbing Daniel Jones.
Yes. Jamie's saying that he'd rather have the 4-string Packers QB than Willis. I wouldn't go that far, but very well could be. The emergency QB. So
listen, you're gonna see some wildcat out of Jaden Reed. Keep that fantasy value pumped up.
Exactly. That could be fun and interesting. I like it. All righty, guys. Well, that's going to do it for us. Appreciate everybody tuning in, chiming in, all the comments, all the questions coming through there. Look forward to seeing everybody again when we go live on Tuesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern. And then Kevin and I will be back on next Friday night with the Bet Set Snap Week 2 edition as we get ready for Fantasy Glory and those cash and trophies. And that's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.